you are probably shortchanging yourself just trying to aim for the RDA, vegan or not. So this video popped up, high protein vegan meals for fat loss. So of course it piqued my interest, not so much the fat loss part. High protein vegan meals. I'm always looking for more high protein vegan meals. This comes from Chelsea May. I've never seen a video from her, so let's do it.
Something I want to point out is that I'm not intentionally trying to eat a higher protein diet. I have done that in the past when I've been counting macros, and it was torture. It is actually really, really hard to eat a higher protein diet and stay in a calorie deficit. So stay in a lower calorie amount while still feeling full, because higher protein foods do tend to be higher in calories.
I'm not sure what protein sources she's talking about. If you're talking about nuts, vegans often say that nuts are a good source of protein. They have some protein, but overwhelmingly they're fat and carbs. So they really don't have a lot of protein compared to more traditional protein sources that are actually really high in protein, right? Like there's really no comparison between like peanuts and like edamame, right? Between peanuts and seitan. So it is a little bit weird when vegans talk about protein sources, and you often see all of these things lumped together. You see peanuts and you see mock meats and you see soy milk, and it's like, what? Like, what exactly does high protein mean? To me, I go by the 20% or more of total calories coming from protein. So nuts are like not high protein. And if you look at like true high protein foods, they are not high in calorie. I mean, to get a lot of protein, you don't have to eat as many calories, right? To get a lot of protein from peanut butter, you have to eat a lot of calories. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, I think, only has like 8 grams of protein. Whereas a cup of soy milk is what? A cup of unsweetened soy milk? Like 80 calories and 8 grams of protein. So I definitely have the opposite experience. I would say trying to eat more protein, I end up eating less calories. But if you're going by the vegan standard of high protein and you're eating a bunch of nuts, then yeah, it's gonna be pretty hard. You're gonna end up eating a lot of calories way before you hit the 100 grams of protein or whatever it is you're aiming for. Okay, so she makes a pasta salad essentially using red lentil pasta, right? It's gonna be higher in calories than just your regular semolina or your regular whole wheat pasta. I definitely love the chickpea based. The lentil based are okay. I find they take forever to cook. And she's got a bunch of vegetables, broccoli and olives and capers in there for flavor. She made enough for 3 lunches. She takes a third and mixes that with a bunch more vegetables, a bunch of spinach and cherry tomatoes. Oh, cool. And she lists the calories and protein, 490 calories, 31 grams of protein, which is definitely over 20%. That's great. But it is also like a lot of food and a lot of fiber. Like she said, one of those little containers was too small for her. She wouldn't be full eating that. I would be totally full eating one of those. Maybe I would have a little piece of fruit with it. But certainly if you're struggling and still feeling hungry, adding more high volume, low calorie foods like spinach, like cherry tomatoes is a great thing to do. Unless it fills you up so much that you're all bloated and don't feel great, because that's what happens to me. And also, I don't think there was like any fat added to that. She dry sauteed the vegetables, as she said, so no oil or anything. So to me, that's going to be just not good. That was the saddest amount of little tahini dressing that she made. It looks really watery. And fat is healthy too. You know, I'm not convinced that just eating a tablespoon of fat here or there is really enough, particularly for women. There might be some correlation with infertility, eating really low fat diets and eating really low calorie as well and being too thin. It's kind of hard to tease those apart because often the people who are eating really low fat are also very thin. But certainly there are lots of healthy fats and there's no reason to limit them to that degree. Unless that is really the only way you're able to maintain a healthy weight, maybe. I mean, you know, I'm no doctor. I would certainly talk to your doctor, but not very much fat so far.
One of the benefits of probably like trying to hit like a slightly higher protein intake is that you're going to be upping your iron intake. So if you want to, when you're using whole foods, so if you're wanting to be getting more iron, you need to be on a higher iron diet to bring that up. maybe you're pregnant or you just know that you're low in iron, then eating meals like this is going to be really, really good for you.
That's true. Typically, foods that are higher in protein, vegan foods, plant foods, are also higher in iron. And you want to make sure that you're eating some vitamin C sources, which she obviously has there, right? With all of the greens. That's going to help with the absorption of the iron from plant foods. That's another reason I talk so much about protein. It's not just about protein, it's also about all of the other nutrients that go along with eating more protein-rich foods on a vegan diet. Okay, so this last meal has a bunch of tofu and edamame. So this one is definitely going to have like a lot of protein, probably more than the other ones. So again, very, very simple tofu, edamame, beans, a little bit of flavoring there from curry powder, some vegetable broth, but again, not a whole lot of fat. There is fat coming from the tofu, but I think that's it. Everything else is just vegetable and fruit. Butternut squash is a fruit.
What I would do if I was going to eat this at a lunch is I would definitely add some greens in there, and I'd probably put a dollop of hummus as well.
Okay, so she does add a little bit of hummus to it. That definitely helps in terms of healthy fats.
If you want to lose weight, you must be in a calorie deficit. That is the most important factor of the equation. The amount of protein that you need per day, or that is recommended, is about 0.8 grams per kilo of lean body weight. So when you think lean body weight, that's like your ideal body weight. So for me, that's only about 50 grams of protein a day.
Just to be clear, the RDA is based on sedentary people, and also it's based on someone eating an omnivorous diet. So even if you're just going on sedentary guidelines, for vegan, it's probably a little bit higher than that.
When you look at the huge meta-analysis of all of these different studies that compare different protein amounts, you can only pull out a really, really small advantage to having a higher protein diet. And the best thing that you can do to preserve muscle while losing weight is to exercise, is to move. It is to be building your muscles through progressive overload. From a muscle preservation standpoint, there doesn't seem to be a huge advantage to trying to get more protein than the recommended amount.
In terms of muscle preservation, that may be true, but many of us want to gain muscle, and there are various benefits to doing so. If you are doing resistance training, you want to be getting more protein than the RDA. That doesn't mean 200 grams of protein or even 120 grams. Like she said, that's probably going to be overkill for most of us ladies, but 90 grams?
If you were to eat similar meals 3 times a day, you're going to be getting about 90 grams of protein a day, which is overkill.
Probably not overkill. More importantly, there seems to be no downside to doing that. We're not talking about getting more protein from red meat. We're talking about getting more protein from plants. And again, you're getting more iron, you're getting more zinc, other minerals that are really important for everyone, but particularly for vegans. So it just makes sense to recommend at least a little bit more than the RDA for most vegans.
If you are trying to increase the amount of protein that you're eating, and you are there, and then also decreasing the amount of carbohydrates that you're eating, which like you have to, there's a balancing act here. As the amount of protein that you're trying to eat in the day goes up from things like tofu, edamame, peas, lentils, all of that kind of stuff, and you're decreasing the amount of carbohydrates that you're eating to do that, then the amount of calories that you're eating is going up and up and up as this one is going up.
Again, just to be clear, beans are carbohydrate foods. They are predominantly carbohydrates. And also it's not just protein and carbs, it's protein, carbs, and fat. So you could still eat lots of carbs, lots of protein, and limit your fat, which is really what she's doing with these higher protein meals. Ideally, probably not limiting fat that much. But yeah, if you want to eat more protein, you are going to have to cut back on one or both of the other macronutrients. And I see what she's saying about calories to some degree. If you look at something like chickpeas, they do contain more calories per gram than something like rice, and certainly than, vegetables like spinach. But you can still eat, you can eat a ton of tofu and a ton of vegetables. So I'm not really sure what she's talking about. This would make more sense to me if she were talking more about high protein processed vegan foods, right? Because some of those, you look at Morningstar Farm nuggets that have breading and whatnot, right? Those are really not low calorie. You get, a few tiny nuggets for 200 calories, right? It's certainly not a high volume food. So that I would understand, but it seems she's mostly talking about legumes, legumes are a pretty high volume food. And that's the other thing I want to say. I mean, ultimately, this is all fairly individual, right? I mean, that's the biggest problem I think I have with this video is that she's very assertive talking about how hard it is to eat more protein and you won't end up feeling satiated. But that's not true for some of us. I know for me, I weighed more when I was eating more like her, eating lower fat and eating lots of carbs, eating some beans as well, but really not focused on protein. I weighed more than I do now. It just was not as satisfying for me. It's why I focus more on protein. I find it more satisfying, even if I am eating lower volume meals. And usually my meals are lower volume because I'm eating like a lot more fat. So yeah, a higher protein and even higher fat diet works for me, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for her or for someone else. I have no doubt that someone else trying to follow the way I eat would find it not satiating at all and would even gain weight. So yeah, we really do need to be careful with how we speak about how to eat and what's going to lead to weight loss. It's one thing to say, try to focus on more fiber and higher volume foods. It's another thing to say, like, don't try to eat more protein from beans because she didn't find it as satisfying. Everyone's different.
And I've done this. I've experienced this firsthand. When I was eating 80 grams or 90 grams of protein a day and limiting my carbohydrates to get that, I was hungry because I couldn't eat a large volume of food and I couldn't eat filling foods like potatoes.
Again, this just sounds very specific to her. I mean, most of us couldn't even finish those meals. I can't imagine adding even more volume, removing some of the tofu or whatever and adding more higher volume foods, more vegetables or something. Oh my God.
When you are on a weight loss journey, no matter what the ideal situation might be, you have to think about what is actually doable, because the best hypothetical plan where you're preserving every ounce of muscle and you're also in a calorie deficit and you also never binge might not be possible. You have to pick your battles, and when it comes to losing weight, if that is your primary goal, then focus on getting into a calorie deficit.
Absolutely, being in a caloric deficit is the key. But one thing she didn't mention about protein is that some studies show that protein is more satiating. And it seems like for some of us, that's how it works. Again, that's not how it is for her. That's fine. But that is potentially an important part of the equation. It's not just about preserving muscle mass.
I never worry about how much protein I'm getting. Just from eating a bowl of sweet potatoes with broccoli, I'm getting about 20 grams of protein in a meal. I don't think that you should be worried about it at all, and I think you should be focusing on eating low calorie dense vegetables, lots of carbohydrates, and building muscle. I haven't been going to the gym recently, so there's not that much there, but building muscle with progressive overload instead.
Again, there's no instead. It's both. You need progressive overload. You need resistance training. Progressive overload just means changing the time under tension, changing the amount of weight, changing the amount of reps, just constantly challenging your muscles so that they can actually grow and you can actually get stronger. You need that, but you also need proper fuel. And again, looking at virtually every study that's been done on the topic, you are probably shortchanging yourself just trying to aim for the RDA, vegan or not. So that part's especially weird to hear her actually promoting progressive overload, which means lifting pretty heavy weights for most of us, at least at some point in your weightlifting journey, and saying, don't worry about protein on a vegan diet. No, you should probably worry about protein at least a little bit, unless all your favorite foods are beans. And it's not just me saying this. Please read some stuff from Jenny Messina. Certainly she's not as like gung-ho about protein as I am, but definitely she says to like, hey, don't just dismiss protein. It's not just, hey, vegans don't worry about protein. No, there are reasons to at least consider it and to pay some amount of attention to your protein sources on a vegan diet. And not just Jenny Messina, right? And just in general, I mean, I just want to make it clear how fringe this viewpoint is, that protein is like an afterthought. Certainly when it comes to lifting weight, the consensus absolutely is that you should aim for more than the RDA, really significantly more than the RDA. So it's just interesting how sure she is that actually, no, don't worry about protein, when her view is the fringe view. And maybe it's not too surprising that she believes that when she says she struggled to get more protein, right? So instead of being like, well, shoot, I would like to get more, but for me, I prioritize being at a lower weight. And so, that's just the way it is. No, maybe instead she's decided to believe that, well, no, actually, you don't need that much protein, even if you are lifting weights. It's like other vegans who want to believe that B12 doesn't really matter, or you can get it from soil, because they really don't want to admit that vegans need to supplement for B12 because it ruins their whole little view of veganism as this like perfect natural diet. I'm not saying for sure that's what's going on here, but it makes sense. And I think it's why almost all of the people you see say protein doesn't matter eat a diet like she does, right? They eat a low-fat, high-carb vegan diet. Anyway, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Trying to get through this before I burp. Hit the bell if you want to be notified when I upload. I think it went away. Has that ever happened? That happens with sneezes. I don't think I've had a burp just like disappear. Okay. Thank you so much to everyone over at Patreon who supports the channel. Patreon.com/unnaturalvegan. You can go support me there too if you want. I post 2 exclusive videos there a month for $5 plus patrons. And I'm also streaming over on Twitch now for the next 30 days at least. This is just going to be a little experiment to see, I don't know, what I think about it, if I like it. So go check me out there if you want. It's just going to be talking about stuff in video games. It's not going to be like cooking foods, or I don't know. I don't know. It's just going to be like a whole separate thing. So if you're into that sort of stuff, check me out. And I guess that's it. Thank you guys. New video soon.